The north is cold and full of whispers.
The tower room smelled of blood and roses. Ned Stark knelt beside the bed where his sister lay dying. Lyanna's dark hair spread across the pillow, damp with sweat and blood. Her gray eyes, Stark eyes, the eyes they shared, fixed on his face with desperate intensity. "Promise me, Ned," she whispered. Her hand gripped his with surprising strength for someone so close to death. "Promise me you'll protect him." In her other arm, wrapped in blankets stained with birth blood, a baby made small sounds. Ned looked down at the child and felt his heart stop. The baby had opened his eyes. They were purple, deep violet, like twilight over the narrow sea. "Lyanna," Ned said, his voice hoarse. His eyes. "I know." She tried to smile. Failed. "He has his father's eyes. Rhaegar's eyes." Ned's gaze moved to the baby's head. Fine hair, barely visible, caught the dim light filtering through the tower's narrow window. It was not dark like Lyanna's, not dark like any Stark's hair had been in 8,000 years. It was silver gold, the color of Targaryen kings. "Robert will kill him," Lyanna said. The words came out wet, thick with the blood filling her lungs. "You know he will. He killed Rhaegar. He'll kill our son. Promise me, Ned. Promise me you won't let him." Outside the tower, 6 of Ned's companions were dead or dying. Lord Dustin, Ethan Glover, Martin Castle, Theo Wool, Willem, Mark Risewell. Only Howland Reed still lived, pale and shaking in the courtyard where they had fought 3 Kingsguard knights to reach this room. Arthur Dane lay dead with Dawn beside him. Oswell Went's white cloak was soaked red. Gerald Hightower had died standing. All of it to reach this tower. All of it to find Lyanna dying in a bed of blood. "I promise," Ned said. The words felt like iron in his mouth. "I'll protect him. I swear it." Her eyes closed. The wet sound of her breathing stopped. Ned sat holding his sister's cooling hand and staring at the silver-haired baby in her arms. The child that could not exist. The child that would get them all killed if anyone saw him. The child he had just sworn to protect. Howland Reed appeared in the doorway. The Cranogman was small and lean, his face still gray from the fight. He looked at Lyanna's body, at the baby. His eyes widened. "Lord Eddard." "Say nothing," Ned said. He stood, carefully taking the baby from Lyanna's arms. The child was warm and alive, impossibly fragile. "No one. Ever." "The hair," Howland said quietly. "The eyes. Robert will. I know what Robert will do." Ned looked down at the baby. Purple eyes stared back at him, unfocused and innocent. "I saw what he did to Rhaegar's other children, what he called them. Dragon spawn. He said it was justice. Princess Rhaenys had been 3 years old, baby Aegon still at the breast. The mountain had dashed the boy's head against a wall and then raped and killed his mother, with the child's blood and brain still on his hands. Sir Amory Lorch had stabbed Rhaenys 100 times. Robert had looked at the bodies wrapped in Lannister crimson cloaks and said they got what they deserved. Ned had left King's Landing rather than stay in the same room with him. "What will you do?" Howland asked. Ned thought of the journey home. 6 weeks through the deserts and mountains of Dorne, then north through the Reach and the Riverlands. 6 weeks where any traveler, any innkeeper, any curious lord could see a baby with silver hair and purple eyes. 6 weeks to reach Winterfell and the wife waiting there, Catelyn Tully, married to seal the alliance that won Robert's throne, now carrying Ned's legitimate child in her belly. He could not claim this baby as his own bastard. No one would believe it. The Stark look was iron law. Dark hair, gray eyes, long solemn faces repeated generation after generation. Robb would be born with auburn Tully hair and blue eyes, favoring his mother. But even Robb would look more Stark than this silver-haired child ever could. "We need to reach Starfall," Ned said. Arthur Dane's sword must be returned to his family. Howland's eyes sharpened. He was a small man, but not a stupid one. Starfall, where Lady Ashara Dane lived. Yes, the lady with the violet eyes. The one they say was dishonored at Harrenhal. Ned said nothing. The silence was answer enough. The story was already half told in whispers and gossip. At the great tourney at Harrenhal 7 years ago, Brandon Stark, Ned's older brother, the heir to Winterfell, the wild wolf with the easy smile and the quick temper, had approached Ashara Dane on behalf of his shy younger brother. She had danced with Med. The song said she was the most beautiful woman at the tourney, with her long dark hair and haunting violet eyes. But it was Brandon who spoke to her first. Brandon, who was never shy. Brandon, who was already betrothed to Catelyn Tully and gave not a damn about propriety. They'll say Brandon fathered a bastard on Ashara, Howland said slowly, working through it. That the child was born after he died. That you found the boy at Starfall when you returned Dawn. Or they'll say nothing at all. Ashara Dane threw herself from a tower at Starfall. After your visit. That's what the stories say. The stories say her baby was stillborn. A daughter. Ned looked down at the living child in his arms. No one will contradict a dead woman's secrets. Howland stepped closer. This is dangerous, Lord Eddard. Even with the Dane name, silver hair and purple eyes, people will wonder. House Dane has those features, not common, but not unknown. Edric Dane has pale hair and dark purple eyes. Darkstar has silver hair. It's in their blood. Ned's voice was flat, rehearsing the lie he would live for the rest of his life. Ashara's eyes were violet. Everyone remembers them. A child of Ashara and Brandon could carry her house's coloring. It's possible. It has to be possible. And if Robert questions it, Robert will be too busy being king to care about Brandon's bastard. He never met Ashara. Never knew my brother well. The story is plausible enough. What about Lady Catelyn? Ned's jaw tightened. Catelyn will understand that this child is Brandon's blood. My nephew. My responsibility. Will she? He barely knew Catelyn. They had married in haste during the war, spent a single night together, then he had ridden off to fight. She was carrying his legitimate child now, a son or daughter with a claim to Winterfell. And Ned was bringing home a silver-haired boy who could threaten that claim if anyone ever legitimized him. But Brandon's bastard had a stronger potential claim than Ned's trueborn children. Male preference primogeniture meant Brandon's line came before Ned's. If this boy were ever legitimized by royal decree, he would be Brandon's heir, displacing Robb entirely. Catelyn would see that. She was a Tully, raised on the politics of inheritance. She would understand the danger immediately. She'll understand duty, Ned said, more to convince himself than Howland. The boy is family. That's all that matters. Howland looked like he wanted to argue, but he had sworn an oath to Ned at Harrenhal, and Cranogman kept their oaths. What will you name him? Ned looked down at the baby. Purple eyes stared back. Lyanna's son, Rhaegar's son, Brandon's son in the only story that could save him. Jon, Ned said, after Jon Arryn. The man who raised me, the man who stood as a father when mine was murdered. Jon Snow, yes, the bastard name for the North. Snow for the boy who should have been a prince. Jon Snow. Starfall rose white against the blue Dornish sky, its pale stone walls glowing in the afternoon sun. The castle sat on an island where the Torrentine River met the summer sea, beautiful and ancient, home to House Dane for thousands of years. Ned rode through the gates with Howland Reed at his side and the baby wrapped in his cloak. He carried Dawn in its plain leather sheath, the legendary greatsword forged from a fallen star, the sword Arthur Dane had wielded better than any man alive, the sword Ned had used to kill him. The courtyard fell silent when they dismounted. Servants stared. Guards touched their weapons. Everyone knew who Ned Stark was. Everyone knew why he had come. A woman emerged from the keep. She was perhaps 40, with the olive skin and dark hair common to Dornishmen. Her face was composed, but her eyes were red from weeping. Lord Stark, she said. Her voice was steady. I am Lady Illyria Dane. Arthur was my brother. Lady Illyria. Ned inclined his head. I've come to return Dawn. Your brother died with honor. He was the finest knight I ever saw. Honor. The word was bitter on her tongue. He died defending a tower in the middle of nowhere while his prince's wife and children were murdered in King's Landing. What honor is there in that? Illyria took it with steady hands, though her eyes glistened. There's something else, Ned said. He pulled the cloak back from the baby. I found him here. I believe he's Brandon's son, my brother's child by Lady Ashara. Illyria's face went very still. She stared at the baby's face, at the silver gold hair, at the purple eyes. Ashara's child was stillborn, she said carefully. Everyone knows that. Perhaps. Illyria's eyes met his. She knew. Of course she knew. But she also knew what Ned was asking. Ashara threw herself from the pale stone sword tower after you visited. She grieved for her child, for Arthur, for too many things. I'm sorry for your losses. Are you? Illyria looked down at the baby again. Her expression softened slightly. What will you do with him? Raise him. As Brandon's son. As my nephew? People will question the coloring. Ashara had violet eyes. Darkstar has silver hair. It's possible. Possible. Illyria repeated. She reached out and touched the baby's cheek with one finger. The child made a small sound. What's his name? Jon. Jon Snow. Illyria was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded once, sharply. Arthur named his nephew after you, Lord Stark. Did you know that? Edric. Ned. He said you were an honorable man. That you would do what was right even when it cost you everything. Ned's throat tightened. I hope to deserve that faith. And never speak of what you found in that tower. Illyria's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Ashara's son was stillborn. This boy is Brandon's. That is the truth, Lord Stark. The only truth that matters. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just protect him. That's all Ashara would have wanted. All any of them would have wanted. She looked at the baby one more time. He has kind eyes. I hope they stay that way. Winterfell's gray walls rose from the plains like they had grown there, ancient and immovable. Ned rode through the gates 6 weeks after leaving Starfall, bone-tired and heartsick, with Jon Snow wrapped against his chest. Catelyn stood in the courtyard waiting. Her belly was swollen with child, Robb growing inside her, the legitimate heir to Winterfell. She looked at Ned, looked at the baby. Her face went pale. Whose child is that? She asked. Her voice was carefully controlled. My nephew, Ned said. He dismounted and stood before his wife. Brandon's son, by Ashara Dane of Starfall. Catelyn's eyes moved from the baby's face to Ned's. Brandon's. Yes? You're certain? As certain as I can be of anything. Catelyn stared at the silver-haired baby. Her mouth was a thin line. Bring him inside. We'll talk privately. Ned followed her through the castle to their chambers. The room was warm, a fire burning in the hearth despite the summer heat. Catelyn closed the door behind them and stood with her back to it. Tell me everything, she said. Ned told her. Not everything. Never the tower, never Lyanna's dying words, never the truth that would get Jon killed. But enough. Brandon at Harrenhal, Ashara Dane's violet eyes, the whispers of dishonor. A bastard born after Brandon's death. Ned finding the boy at Starfall when he returned Arthur Dane's sword. The Danes confirmed it? Catelyn asked. They didn't deny it. That's not the same thing. It's as close as we'll get. Ashara is dead. Brandon is dead. The only person who knows for certain is this child, and he can't speak. Catelyn moved closer. She looked down at Jon with an expression Ned couldn't read. He has Ashara's eyes. The stories about her eyes were true then. Yes? And the hair? House Dane has silver hair in their lineage. Darkstar. Others. It's rare but not impossible. But everyone will see it. Everyone will know this child isn't yours. Catelyn's hand moved to her swollen belly. They'll know you didn't dishonor our marriage. Ned blinked. He had expected rage, resentment, demands that the bastard be sent away. Instead, Catelyn sounded almost relieved. I've carried that fear since you rode south, Catelyn said quietly. That you would come home with some Dornish woman's bastard. That I would spend my marriage looking at proof of your infidelity every day. But this is Brandon's son, not yours. Does that matter? It matters to me. Catelyn's voice was fierce. My honor is intact. Your honor is intact. This child is your nephew, your duty, not your shame. I can't live with betrayal. Ned felt something unknot in his chest. Then you'll accept him? I'll accept that he's family. Catelyn's expression hardened. But I'm not blind to what he represents. Brandon was the elder brother. The heir to Winterfell. If this boy is ever legitimized, his claim comes before our children's, before Robb's. No one will legitimize him. You can't promise that. Kings have legitimized bastards before. Aegon IV legitimized all his bastards on his deathbed. Do you know what came from that? The Blackfire rebellions. 5 generations of war. Tens of thousands dead. All because of legitimized bastards fighting for thrones. Robert won't legitimize anyone. He has his own heirs now. And whoever comes after him may see uses for a bastard with a claim to the north. Catelyn's hand tightened on her belly. I will do my duty, Ned. I will accept this child under our roof. I will see that he's fed and clothed and raised with honor. But I will never forget what he could become. And I will protect our children's inheritance with everything I have." Ned looked at his wife. She was right. He knew she was right. Jon was a political weapon that could be turned against Robb, against any children Ned and Catelyn had. The Blackfyre precedent was real. The danger was real. But so was the promise he had made to Lyanna. "He'll be raised here," Ned said, "as family, as pack. That's not negotiable." "I understand." Catelyn's voice was cold. "Just understand that I will be watching. Always." 14 years passed. Jon Snow grew up in Winterfell's halls and yards, a boy with silver-gold hair and purple eyes that marked him as different from every other child in the castle. The Stark children had auburn Tully hair or dark Stark hair. Jon alone carried Ashara Dane's coloring, a living reminder that he was not quite pack, not quite family, forever separated by the accident of his birth. The servants whispered. The guards stared. Visiting lords asked pointed questions about Brandon Stark's wild reputation and Ashara Dane's violet eyes. Catelyn kept her word. Jon was fed, clothed, trained in arms by Ser Rodrik Cassel alongside Robb. But Catelyn's eyes followed him with cold calculation, measuring the threat he represented. When Jon excelled at swordplay, when the maester praised his quick mind, when he showed the quiet courtesy that made Bannerman smile, Catelyn saw danger. Every talent was a weapon. Every achievement was ammunition for future conflict. Robb loved him. Arya adored him. Bran followed him everywhere. Rickon was too young to understand the difference between true-born and bastard. But Sansa looked at his silver hair and purple eyes and asked once, quietly, why Jon didn't look like a Stark. "Because my mother was from Dorne," Jon had said. He was 8 years old and he had learned the story by heart. Lady Ashara Dane. She had purple eyes and silver hair runs in her house. "I got her coloring. But why isn't your name Stark?" Sansa pressed. "Because my father and mother weren't married. That makes me a bastard. That's why my name is Snow." Jon had stood in the courtyard with Ghost, the white direwolf pup they had found in the snow, the runt of the litter who never made a sound, and wondered why he had to be different. Why he couldn't just have dark hair and gray eyes like a proper Stark. Ned watched him from the shadows and felt the weight of his promise grow heavier every year. Jon was a good boy. Serious, responsible, kind to his younger siblings. He practiced every day with sword and bow, until Ser Rodrik said he was the best student the Master-at-Arms had trained since Brandon himself. The irony was not lost on Ned. Brandon's supposed bastard fought like Brandon had fought, quick and fierce and slightly reckless. The wolf blood ran true, even in a child who had never known his supposed father. When Jon was 14, he asked about his mother. They were in Ned's solar, going over the household accounts. Ned was teaching Jon the business of lordship even though a bastard would never rule. But Jon soaked up knowledge like sand soaked up water, and Ned could not deny him this small preparation for whatever future awaited. "Father," Jon said, using the title he had been taught despite Ned not being his father. "Can you tell me about Lady Ashara?" Ned's hand stilled on the ledger. "What do you want to know?" "What she was like. Whether she—" Jon hesitated. "Whether she wanted me." "She died after you were born," Ned said carefully. The grief was too much. She had lost her brother Arthur at the Tower of Joy, lost your father Brandon to the Mad King's madness, lost her child, you, to the reality that you would be raised far away by me. It was more than she could bear. So she threw herself from a tower. Yes. Jon was quiet for a moment. "I killed her. By being born. No." Ned put down his quill and looked directly at Jon. "You didn't kill anyone. Ashara made her own choice. The war killed her. Grief killed her. You were innocent. I'm a bastard. I'm proof of dishonor. You're my nephew, Brandon's son. There's no dishonor in that. Then why does Lady Catelyn hate me?" Ned had no good answer. "She doesn't hate you. She fears what you represent. The complications you bring. Because I could threaten Robb's inheritance if I were legitimized. You're too young to worry about such things. I'm 14. Old enough to know what I am." Jon's purple eyes were serious beyond his years. "I heard the maester talking about the Blackfyre rebellions, about what happens when bastards are legitimized, about the wars that come from it. That won't happen here. You can't promise that. Kings change. Laws change. Lady Catelyn is right to fear me. I am a threat, whether I want to be or not." Ned stared at the boy, Not his son, his sister's son, Rhaegar's son hidden behind a lie built from gossip and timing and the violet eyes of a dead woman. Jon had his mother's coloring and his father's gravity, the weight of prophecy and song translated into a serious boy who studied too hard and practiced too long, and asked questions that had no safe answers. "You are not a threat," Ned said firmly. "You are Pack. That's all that matters." But even as he said it, Ned felt the lie's fragility. The cover story worked because the Danes had not contradicted it, because Howland Reed kept his silence, because no one who knew the truth lived to speak it. The story worked until someone looked too closely, and in 3 years, someone would. The Raven came in the 9th month of 298 AC, 14 years after Ned had carried a silver-haired baby home from Dorne. King Robert Baratheon was coming north, to Winterfell, to ask Ned to serve as Hand of the King. Ned read the letter 3 times, his stomach knotting tighter with each reading. Robert, his oldest friend, his brother in all but blood, the man who had smashed Rhaegar Targaryen's chest with a warhammer on the trident, and smiled as rubies flew from the dead prince's armor. Robert was coming to Winterfell, where Jon Snow lived, where a boy with silver gold hair and purple eyes would be visible at every feast, every hunt, every gathering. Ned's hand trembled as he set the letter down. "What is it?" Catelyn asked. She stood in the solar doorway, her face concerned. "Robert is coming north, the king, with the whole royal household. He's offering me the position of Hand." Catelyn's eyes widened. "The Hand of the King. Ned, that's... I know what it is." Ned stood and paced to the window. Outside, snow was beginning to fall. Early for autumn, but the north was always cold. "He'll be here within 6 weeks, with Queen Cersei, with the royal children, with half the court." What about Jon? The question hung between them. Ned turned to look at his wife. "What about him?" "The king will see him. The queen will see him. Everyone will see him. A boy with silver hair and purple eyes, living in your household, trained as a lord's son despite being a bastard." Catelyn's voice was tight. "You know what they'll think, just as we've told them." "Will they?" Catelyn moved closer. "Ned, we've lived with this lie for 14 years. We've made it work because we're careful. Because Jon stays out of sight when southern lords visit. Because the Danes are far away in Dorne, and dead women don't contradict stories. But the king, the queen, they knew Rhaegar Targaryen. They saw his face every day for years. They knew those features intimately." Ned's jaw clenched. "The story is solid. Brandon and Ashara at Harrenhal. The timeline works. The Dane coloring explains everything. Or does it just barely hold together if no one looks too closely?" Catelyn's eyes were fierce. "Robert hates the Targaryens, Ned. You know he does. He wanted to kill Daenerys Targaryen across the Narrow Sea because she was pregnant with a Dothraki prince's child. What do you think he'll do if he suspects, even for a moment, that Jon is Rhaegar's son instead of Brandon's? He won't suspect. Why would he? The story makes sense. Because Robert is not a fool. Neither is Cersei Lannister. She was promised to Rhaegar as a girl. She watched him at court. She knows his face better than anyone alive." Catelyn gripped Ned's arm. "Send Jon away, before the king arrives. Send him to the Wall, to Greywater Watch, anywhere Robert won't see him." "I can't do that. It would raise more questions than it answers. Why would I send Brandon's son away just because the king is visiting? It would look suspicious." "Then what do you suggest?" Ned turned back to the window. In the yard below, Jon was practicing with a sword, his silver hair bright even in the gray afternoon light. Robb sparred with him, their blades clacking in rhythmic patterns. They moved like brothers. They were brothers in every way that mattered. "We do nothing," Ned said quietly. "We welcome the king. We tell the same story we've always told. And we trust that Robert is too busy being king to care about Brandon's old mistakes. And if you're wrong, then we'll face it when it comes." But Ned's hand gripped the window ledge hard enough that his knuckles went white. Because he knew Catelyn was right. The lie had held for 14 years, but 14 years of safety did not guarantee 14 more days. Robert was coming. And with him came the 3 most dangerous pairs of eyes in the 7 kingdoms. Eyes that had known Rhaegar Targaryen's face as well as their own. The king who had killed him. The queen who had loved him. The knight who had stood beside him. 1 month until they arrived. 1 month to prepare for the moment when everything could shatter. Ned closed his eyes and heard Lyanna's voice from 14 years ago. Promise me, Ned. He had promised, and he would keep that promise even if it cost him everything. But the price, he knew, was about to come due. The royal party arrived on a gray morning, when the wind carried the smell of autumn. Ned stood in Winterfell's courtyard with his household assembled behind him. Catelyn at his side, Robb and Sansa in their finest clothes, Arya squirming in a dress she hated, Bran and Rickon scrubbed clean and serious, and Jon standing with the household guard at the back, his silver gold hair covered by a hood despite the absence of rain. Ned had made that decision the night before. Jon would attend the welcome, but the hood would provide some small buffer, some momentary delay before the inevitable moment when someone saw what he was. The gates swung open and the royal procession entered. 300 people, maybe more, knights in armor, servants in livery, wagons piled with chests and barrels. At the center rode King Robert Baratheon, on a horse that looked too small beneath his bulk. Robert had grown fat. The warrior who smashed Rhaegar on the trident had been replaced by a man whose belly strained against silk and velvet, whose black beard was shot with gray. But his eyes were the same, blue and hard and searching. Behind Robert came Queen Cersei in a wheelhouse, golden and beautiful and remote. Her twin brother Jaime Lannister rode beside the wheelhouse, in white Kingsguard armor, his golden hair bright as a banner. Prince Joffrey sat a horse with the stiffness of someone who did not ride often, golden-haired and handsome and cruel around the mouth. Ned went to one knee. His household followed. Robert dismounted with a grunt and crossed to Ned, his boots heavy on the packed earth. "Ned," Robert said. His voice was rough from years of wine and shouting. "Get up." "Gods don't kneel to me. Not you." Ned rose and found himself pulled into a crushing embrace. Robert smelled of sweat and wine and horse. When he released Ned and stepped back, his eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. "You're as gray as a winter wolf," Robert said, "and thin. Do they not feed you in the north?" "We save the food for guests, Your Grace." Robert laughed, the sound booming across the courtyard. "Your Grace, listen to you. It's Robert. Just Robert, like it was before all this." He gestured vaguely at the crown on his head, the retinue filling the yard. "Before I had to be a damned king. You wear it well. I wear it like a noose." Robert's gaze moved past Ned to the assembled household. "Your lady wife. Gods, Catelyn, you're still beautiful. And these are your children." Ned made the introductions. Robert clapped Robb on the shoulder hard enough to make the boy stagger. He kissed Sansa's hand and made her blush. He ruffled Bran's hair. He barely glanced at Arya or Rickon. And then his eyes found Jon. The boy stood with the guards, hood still up, but his face was visible. Robert's gaze locked on him, and something changed in the king's expression, a tightening around the eyes, a stillness that replaced his jovial manner. "Who's that?" Robert asked. His voice had gone flat. "My nephew," Ned said. His heart hammered, but his voice stayed steady. "Jon Snow, Brandon's son." "Brandon's—" Robert moved closer, his eyes never leaving Jon. "Pull back your hood, boy." There was no avoiding it now. Jon pushed the hood back. Silver gold hair spilled out, catching the weak sunlight. Purple eyes met Robert's blue ones. The courtyard went very quiet. Robert stared at Jon for a long moment. His face worked through several expressions: confusion, recognition, something darker. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "Brandon's son. You're certain?" "Yes," Ned said. "By Ashara Dane of Starfall. Brandon met her at the tourney at Harrenhal." Ashara Dane. Robert's eyes narrowed. The one with the purple eyes. The one who died. She threw herself from a tower at Starfall after the child was born. The grief was too much. "And you found the boy there when you returned Arthur Dane's sword?" "Yes." Robert continued to stare at Jon. The boy stood very still, his face carefully blank in a way that reminded Ned painfully of Lyanna. Robert circled Jon slowly, looking at him from every angle. The entire courtyard watched in silence. "He has her eyes," Robert said finally. "And the hair. The Danes have that coloring." "Some of them do," Ned confirmed. "Your brother always did have a talent for finding beautiful women." Robert's voice held an edge. "Though I'm surprised he'd dishonor a highborn lady, Brandon had some sense of propriety. The tourney was wine and music and young people far from home. Things happened." Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. He turned away from Jon and faced Ned directly. "We'll speak more of this later. Privately. For now, I need a bath and a meal. 6 weeks on the road and I smell like a horse's ass. The courtyard erupted into motion, horses being led away, chests being carried inside, the organized chaos of 300 people settling into a castle. Catelyn touched Ned's arm. He suspects. He saw what I told him to see. A boy with the Shara Dane's coloring. Did he? Catelyn's voice was tight. Or did he see something else and chose not to say it yet? Ned had no answer. He looked for Jon and found the boy already gone, vanished into the castle. Ghost would be with him. The white direwolf never left Jon's side. Smart to disappear, smart to stay out of sight. But they had 6 weeks of this. 6 weeks of royal visit, of feasts and hunts and close quarters. 6 weeks where Jon's silver hair would be visible at every meal, every gathering, every moment. 6 weeks to hold together a lie that was already starting to crack. Robert demanded to see Lyanna's tomb that first afternoon. Ned led him down into the crypts beneath Winterfell, carrying a torch that threw shadows across stone faces carved centuries ago. The kings of winter watched from their alcoves, iron swords across their knees, stone dire wolves at their feet. They descended deep into the earth, where the newest tombs waited. Rickard Stark, who had burned alive in the Mad King's throne room. Brandon Stark, who had strangled himself trying to save his father. And between them, in a place of honor, Lyanna Stark. The statue was not a perfect likeness. No statue ever was, but it captured something of Lyanna's wildness. Her stone hair was caught as if by wind. Her face held a small smile. At her feet lay winter roses, carved from the same gray stone. Robert stopped before it and was silent for a long time. "I still love her," he said finally. His voice was thick. "After all these years, all these disappointments, I still love her. I know. Do you?" Robert touched Lyanna's stone face with surprising gentleness. "You weren't there when Rhaegar took her. You didn't see what it did to me. What it still does. She's been dead 14 years, Robert. And in my dreams, I kill him every night." Robert's hand dropped to his side, clenched into a fist. 1,000 deaths will still be less than he deserves. The smiling prince, the harp-playing fool, he stole her, raped her, left her to die birthing his bastard. Ned's throat closed. Every word was a knife. Lyanna died of a fever. The child died with her. Good. Robert's voice was savage. Better dead than alive. Better no dragon survived that tower. Better, he stopped, breathing hard. "I'm sorry. I know she was your sister. But God's Ned, what he did to her. What he did to all of us. It's long past, Robert. The war is over. The Targaryens are dead or fled. Not all of them. Viserys and Daenerys are still out there, beggars across the narrow sea, but alive. Targaryen blood alive and scheming." Robert turned away from the statue. "That's one reason I came north. I need you, Ned. I need a hand I can trust. Jon Arryn is dead. He was the last man in King's Landing who told me the truth. Now I'm surrounded by Lannisters and bootlickers and men who smile while they sharpen knives. What happened to Jon Arryn? A fever. Came on quick. Killed him in 2 weeks. The maesters couldn't save him." Robert's face was bleak. He was investigating something before he died. Asking questions. Visiting odd places in the city. I don't know what he was looking for. Odd places? An armorer on the Street of Steel. A brothel. He wouldn't tell me why. Then he died, and whatever he was seeking died with him. Robert gripped Ned's shoulder. "I need you in King's Landing. I need someone who doesn't want power, doesn't scheme, just tells me what's true. Will you serve?" Ned wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed to keep his family in the north, away from the viper's nest of the capital. But Robert was his oldest friend, the man he had fought beside in the war, the man who had helped destroy the Mad King and end Targaryen rule. "I'll serve," Ned said. Robert smiled, genuine warmth breaking through the gloom. "Good. That's good. We'll ride south together when I leave. Bring your daughters. Sansa can be betrothed to Joffrey. Unite our houses properly, and your boys can squire, learn the ways of court. Not all my household. No, keep one boy here to hold Winterfell, Rob, I suppose. He's your heir." Robert's eyes turned shrewd. "What about Brandon's bastard? Jon Snow. What will you do with him? He'll stay in the north. Keep him far from King's Landing, far from court." Robert's voice dropped. "I saw how you looked at him in the yard, Ned. like he was your own son. But he's not. He's your brother's mistake. Don't let Brandon's sins become your burden. Jon is family. That's burden enough. Family. Robert laughed bitterly. My family is Lannisters and more Lannisters. Cersei birthed me 3 golden-haired children who look nothing like me. Sometimes I wonder. He stopped. Never mind. Old suspicions. Old angers. Come, let's get out of this tomb. I need wine. They climbed back to the light, leaving Lyanna's statue in the darkness. But Ned's mind churned. Robert had noticed. He had seen Jon's coloring and wondered. The Dane explanation had held, barely, but Robert's suspicions were alive and stirring. And that comment about Cersei's children, the bitterness in his voice, something was wrong in the royal marriage. Something that made Robert question his own heirs. Ned had agreed to serve as hand, which meant leaving Winterfell, leaving Jon where Robert's suspicions could not reach him. But it also meant 6 more weeks of close proximity, 6 weeks where anything could happen. The feast that night filled Winterfell's great hall with sound and heat and the smell of roasted meat. 300 guests and the household all crammed together at long tables, ale and wine flowing freely, musicians playing in the gallery. Jon sat at the far end of the hall with the squires and household guards, as far from the high table as possible. Catelyn had insisted. The hood was back up, shadowing his face, but the silver hair was still visible to anyone who looked. He tried to stay invisible, tried to eat quietly, speak to no one, draw no attention. But invisibility was hard when you were the only person in a hall of 300 with hair the color of moonlight. A shadow fell across his table. Jon looked up and found Tyrion Lannister standing there. The imp was small, barely 4 feet tall, with stunted legs and a large head, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent, mismatched green and black, and his smile held genuine curiosity. Jon Snow, Tyrion said. He spoke the name like he was tasting it. Brandon Stark's bastard, the silver-haired wolf. May I sit? I like that. Tyrion climbed onto the bench with some difficulty and poured himself ale from the pitcher. You have interesting coloring for a northerner. Silver hair, purple eyes. One might almost think you had Valyrian blood. Jon's stomach tightened. My mother was Ashara Dane. House Dane has those features. Ah, yes. The beautiful Ashara with the haunting eyes. I never met her, but the songs paint quite a picture. Tyrion drank deeply. She danced with your Uncle Ned at Harrenhal, didn't she? But bedded his brother Brandon. Quite the scandal. It was a long time ago. 14 years. You'd be, what, 14 yourself? 15? Tyrion's mismatched eyes studied Jon. The timing is remarkably precise. Tornian 282. As if someone planned it all very carefully. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? Tyrion smiled. I'm a student of history, Jon Snow. I know about families and their secrets. I know about children born the wrong color, raised under false names, hidden in plain sight. I know what bastards are. I'm one myself in everyone's eyes but the law. My mother died birthing me, so I'm a patricide and a monster, even with the Lannister name. Why are you telling me this? Because I see you sitting here in the shadows, trying not to exist, and I recognize it. We're both cursed by birth, you and I. Different curses, but curses all the same. Tyrion raised his cup. To bastards and dwarfs, may we survive the people who should love us. You're strange, my lord. I prefer dangerously perceptive, but strange will do. Tyrion set down his cup. A word of advice, if you'll take it. Keep that hood up around my sister. Queen Cersei has a particular hatred for anything that reminds her of, well, let's just say she doesn't like competition. Competition for what? Power. The memory of men who should have been hers. Tyrion stood to leave. Be careful, Jon Snow. You're more interesting than you should be, and interesting people don't last long at court. He walked away, leaving Jon with a chill that had nothing to do with the hall's temperature. 5 days into the visit, Jon was summoned to Ned Solar. He climbed the tower stairs with Ghost padding behind him, wondering what he had done wrong. The dire wolf was massive now, nearly as large as a pony, his red eyes and white fur drawing stares wherever he went. Ned stood by the window when Jon entered. His face was grave. Close the door, Ned said. Jon obeyed. Have I offended someone? I've been staying out of sight like Lady Catelyn asked. You've done nothing wrong. Ned turned from the window. But we need to talk about what happens when I go south. You are taking the position. As hand. Yes, I'm taking Sansa and Arya with me. Sansa will be betrothed to Joffrey. Arya will cause chaos, but she'll be safer with me than running wild in Winterfell. Ned's gray eyes were tired. Robb will hold Winterfell as my heir. You'll stay with him. I understand. Do you? Ned moved closer. Jon, listen to me carefully. Robert is suspicious. He hasn't said anything directly, but I see it in how he looks at you, how he asks questions about Brandon and Ashara. The story holds, but it's fragile. If he pushes too hard, if he investigates too deeply, then he'll learn the truth. There is no truth except what we tell him. You are Brandon's son. That's the truth, the only truth that matters. Jon met Ned's eyes. You're lying to the king, to your oldest friend, for me. I'm keeping a promise. To your mother. Ned stopped. To the memory of a woman who deserved better than she got. Ashara Dane. Ned gripped Jon's shoulder. When I'm gone, you stay close to Robb. You stay in the north. If Robert ever summons you south, you refuse. You take the black if you must. Join the Night's Watch where he can't reach you. But you don't go to King's Landing. Not ever. Understood? Yes, father. Ned's expression softened at the word. He had never corrected Jon from calling him father, even though they both knew it was a lie. You're a good boy. Better than you know. I'm proud of you. I'm a bastard. What's there to be proud of? You're honorable. Kind. You protect your siblings without being asked. You work harder than anyone in the practice yard because you know you have to be twice as good to be seen as half as worthy. Ned's voice was fierce. That's what I'm proud of. Not your name or your birth. You. Jon felt his throat tighten. Thank you. Now go. Stay out of sight. 2 more weeks and the king will be gone. We just need to last 2 more weeks. The weeks did not last. On the 10th day of the visit, Cersei Lannister saw Jon in the courtyard. He was practicing sword work with Robb. Both of them stripped to shirt sleeves despite the cold, working through the forms Sir Roderick had taught them. Jon's silver hair was uncovered. There was no hiding it in the yard, and his purple eyes were bright with concentration. Cersei walked past with her ladies, on her way to the Godswood. She stopped when she saw Jon, stopped completely frozen in place, staring. Jon felt her gaze and turned. Their eyes met across 20 yards of packed earth. Cersei's face went pale, then red, then cold as winter. She said something to her ladies and walked directly toward Jon. Robb stepped forward protectively, but Cersei ignored him. She stopped 3 feet from Jon and studied his face with an intensity that made Jon's skin crawl. "What's your name?" Cersei asked. Her voice was controlled, but there was something dangerous underneath. "Jon Snow, Your Grace." Snow. A bastard name. Her eyes moved over his features. Hair, eyes, the shape of his face. Whose bastard? Brandon Stark's, Lord Eddard's brother. Brandon Stark. Cersei repeated the name slowly. "And your mother?" The silver hair and purple eyes. Cersei's smile was sharp as a knife. How very convenient. How very meet. A dead woman's bastard, raised by Honorable Ned Stark, out of duty to his brother. "Your Grace?" Jon kept his voice carefully neutral. "You look familiar," Cersei said. "There's something about your eyes. The color. I knew someone once with eyes that color. A long time ago." Jon's heart hammered. "Many people have purple eyes, Your Grace. It's not uncommon in some bloodlines." "No, not uncommon at all." Cersei stepped closer, so close Jon could smell her perfume. "Tell me something, boy. Do you know who your real father is? Or do you just believe what they've told you?" "I believe what Lord Eddard has told me. He's never lied to me." "Hasn't he?" Cersei's voice dropped to a whisper. "Everyone lies, sweet boy. Especially about children who shouldn't exist." She turned and walked away, her ladies scrambling to follow. Jon stood frozen, his pulse racing. Robb grabbed his arm. "What was that about?" "I don't know." He had seen something in Cersei's eyes. Recognition. Not of Brandon Stark, not of Ashara Dane. Something else. Someone else. And if Cersei suspected, she would tell Robert. And if Robert knew... Jon thought of the stories about Rhaegar's children. The baby dashed against a wall. The little girl stabbed 50 times. Robert looking at the bodies and calling it justice. "We need to tell father," Robb said. They ran for Ned's solar. Ned listened to Jon's account with a face like stone. When Jon finished, Ned sat in silence for a long moment. "She knows," Catelyn said. She stood by the door, her face pale. Or she suspects. Either way, she's dangerous. She can't prove anything, Ned said. Jon's story is solid. The Danes, the timeline, everything fits. She's the queen. She has Robert's ear. If she whispers suspicions, if she plants doubt, then I deal with it. How? By lying to your oldest friend? By denying what Cersei saw? Catelyn moved closer to Ned's desk. We should send Jon away, tonight. Before Cersei can act. Running makes him look guilty. Staying makes him a target. Both of you calm down. Cersei is dangerous, yes. But she's also clever. She won't move against Jon directly, not without proof. It would make her look mad, paranoid. She'll watch. She'll wait. And we'll be careful. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jory Castle entered, his face grim. Lord Stark, the king requests your presence in his chambers. Immediately. Ned's jaw tightened. Did he say why? No, my lord. But he seems agitated. Ned looked at Catelyn. At Jon. Stay here. Both of you. Don't leave this room until I return. He followed Jory out. The solar fell silent except for the crackle of the fire. Jon sat down, his hands trembling. Ghost pressed against his leg, the direwolf's warmth reassuring. This is my fault. No, Catelyn said, surprisingly gentle. This is the fault of everyone who lied. Everyone who thought they could hide you forever. You wanted me sent away? I still do, but not because I hate you. Catelyn looked at him directly. I fear what you represent. I fear the war that could come from you. But I don't hate you, Jon. You're just a boy caught in the schemes of people who died before you could walk. Do you think the king will? I think your father will protect you. Because that's who he is. Because he made a promise, and Ned Stark keeps his promises even when they destroy him. They waited. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, Ned returned. His face was gray, his movements slow. He looked like he had aged 10 years. What did Robert say? Catelyn asked. Ned poured wine with shaking hands, drank it in one swallow, poured again. He asked about Jon. Ned said finally. Cersei told him what she suspected, that the boy's coloring was too perfect, too Valyrian, that the timing was too convenient, that I had gone to the Tower of Joy and come back with a baby the same age as Rhaegar's supposed dead son. What did you tell him? Catelyn whispered. The truth we've always told, that Jon is Brandon's son by Ashara Dane, that I found him at Starfall, that the coloring comes from his mother's bloodline. Ned drank again. Robert wanted proof, documents, witnesses, something beyond my word. What did you give him? My word, my honor, my oath as his friend and his vassal. Ned's eyes were haunted, and I reminded him that Ashara Dane is dead. Arthur Dane is dead. Brandon is dead. The only witnesses who could confirm or deny the story are gone. All that remains is my testimony and the boy himself. Did he believe you? He wants to. Ned set down the cup. He wants to believe that his oldest friend wouldn't lie to him, that the boy is Brandon's mistake and nothing more. But Cersei has planted doubt, and doubt is a poison that spreads. So what happens now? Jon asked. His voice was smaller than he wanted it to be. Now I go to King's Landing, as planned. I serve as hand, and I keep Robert too busy with governance to think about silver-haired bastards in the north. Ned looked at Jon. And you stay here. You stay close to Robb. You never, ever go south. Because if you do, if you're anywhere near Robert when his doubts overcome his friendship, he will demand proof I cannot provide. And then everything ends. He'd kill me. He killed Rhaegar's other children without hesitation. He would kill you without losing sleep. Because to Robert, you're not a boy. You're dragon spawn. You're the enemy he killed on the trident wearing a different face. Jon nodded slowly. I understand. Good, Ned stood. The king leaves in 4 days. We all need to survive 4 more days. Can you do that? I can try. That's all I ask. 3 days. Jon made it 3 days. On the 4th morning, the day before Robert's planned departure, Jon woke to shouting in the courtyard. He dressed quickly and ran downstairs, Ghost at his heels. The yard was full of people, guards, servants, nobles, all pressed together watching something. Jon pushed through the crowd and saw Joffrey Baratheon in the center, his golden hair bright in the morning sun. The prince held a sword, a real sword, not a practice blade, and he was pointing it at Arya. Arya stood 10 feet away with needle in her hand. The slender Bravosi blade Mikken had forged for her looked like a toy compared to Joffrey's steel. But Arya's face was set with stark stubbornness. "Put the sword down, you stupid girl," Joffrey said. His voice was high and petulant. "I'm the prince. You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening you," Arya shot back. "I'm defending Micah." Jon's eyes found the butcher's boy standing near the stable wall. Micah's face was bleeding from a cut across his cheek. "He's common born," Joffrey said. He struck the prince with a stick. "That's treason. He should be whipped. You told him to hit you. You said it was practice. I said no such thing. You're a liar and your friend is a traitor." Joffrey advanced on Arya. "Now put down your sword, or I'll—" He didn't finish. Jon was already moving. He crossed the yard in 3 strides, grabbed Joffrey's sword arm, and twisted. The prince yelped. His sword clattered to the ground. Jon released him and stepped between Joffrey and Arya. "Leave her alone," Jon said quietly. Joffrey's face went red. "How dare you? I'm the prince. You're nothing. You're a bastard. Get out of my way." Everyone watching, everyone seeing the silver-haired bastard refuse a royal command. Joffrey's hand went to his belt for a dagger. Jon's hand was already on his own sword hilt. "Enough!" Robert's voice cracked across the yard like a whip. The king strode forward, his face thunderous. Behind him came Ned, Cersei, Jaime Lannister, half the court. "What in the 7 hells is happening here?" Robert demanded. Everyone started talking at once. Joffrey claimed he'd been attacked. Arya said Joffrey was lying. Micah tried to apologize. The crowd murmured and whispered. Robert's eyes found Jon. "You, the snow boy, explain." Jon met the king's gaze. "The prince was threatening Lady Arya with a sword, your grace. I stopped him. He put hands on me," Joffrey shrieked. "He assaulted the crown prince. That's treason." "Is it treason to protect my sister from a drawn blade?" Jon asked. His voice was calm, but his heart hammered. "I used no violence. I simply disarmed someone who was threatening a child." Robert looked at the sword on the ground, at Arya with needle, at Micah bleeding by the wall, at Jon standing between them all. "This is absurd," Cersei said, her voice cut through the noise. "That boy, that bastard, laid hands on the prince. He should be punished, flogged, or worse. For protecting his sister," Robert's tone was dangerous. "For forgetting his place." Cersei's green eyes blazed. "He's a bastard, a Snow. He has no right to interfere with his betters." "His betters." Robert's gaze swung to Joffrey. "Boy, did you draw steel on a girl." "She was with the butcher's boy." "They were." Joffrey's mouth worked. She, well, not with live steel. What were you thinking?" "She insulted me, then insult her back, challenge her to a duel when she's of age. But you don't draw a sword on a little girl like some common brigand." Robert turned to Ned. "I apologize for my son's behavior. The boy needs more training in what it means to be a prince." "No apology necessary, your grace. There is one issue." Robert's eyes moved back to Jon. "The boy did lay hands on Joffrey. That's technically assault on the royal person. However," Robert continued, "he did it to prevent violence, to protect his sister. That's honorable." The king's gaze was measuring, weighing. "What's your name again, boy?" "Jon Snow, your grace. Brandon's bastard, the silver-haired wolf." Robert stepped closer, close enough that Jon could smell wine on his breath. "You look like a fighter. Quick hands. Good instincts. Your uncle would be proud." "Thank you, your grace. But you're still a bastard. And bastards don't interfere with princes no matter how stupid the prince is being." Robert's voice hardened. "You're lucky I'm in a generous mood. If I wasn't, you'd be in a cell. Understand?" "Yes, your grace." "Good." Robert turned to Cersei. "The matter is settled. No floggings, no punishment. The children were being children, and the snowboy showed more sense than my own son. Let that be the end of it." Cersei's face was a mask of fury, but she said nothing. She grabbed Joffrey's arm and pulled him toward the keep, hissing something in his ear. The crowd dispersed. Ned caught Jon's arm and pulled him aside. "That was reckless," Ned said quietly. "He was going to hurt Arya." "I know, and I'm proud you defended her. But Jon," Ned's grip tightened. "You drew the king's attention. Cersei's attention. Joffrey's attention. You made yourself visible. I know. I'm sorry." Don't be sorry. Just be careful. Ned glanced toward where Robert stood talking with Sir Barristan. One more day. Just survive. One more day. Robert left the next morning, but he did not leave alone. Ned rode beside the king's horse, already dressed in his traveling leathers, his face set with the resignation of a man who had accepted his duty. Behind them came Sansa in a wagon with Septim Mordain, her auburn hair bright against her fine cloak. Arya rode on a piebald mare, already complaining about having to leave her direwolf Nymeria behind with Robb. Jon stood in the courtyard watching them go. Ghost pressed against his leg. The white direwolf was tense, sensing the wrongness of the pack splitting apart. Robb stood beside Jon, his face grave. At 16, Robb looked older than his years, already growing into the lord he would have to be with Ned gone. Father told me to keep you close, to keep you safe. I can keep myself safe. Can you? Robb looked at him. Jon, what happened yesterday with Joffrey? That was brave. But it was also reckless. You know what people are saying. That you have Targaryen features. That the story about Brandon and Ashara doesn't quite add up. That you're too well trained for a bastard, too educated, too... Robb stopped. They're saying father cares about you more than makes sense for a nephew. More than he should. Jon's stomach nodded. What do you think? I think father has his reasons for everything he does. And I think those reasons are his business, not mine. Robb gripped Jon's shoulder. You're my brother. That's all that matters to me. But others are watching. Others are wondering. You need to be more careful. I'm always careful. Then be more than careful. Be invisible. Robb's blue eyes were serious. Father said if things get dangerous, you're to go to Greywater Watch, to Howland Reed. He's the only one father trusts completely. But father was very specific. If Robert ever sends men north looking for you, if anyone ever comes asking questions you can't answer, you go to the swamps. You disappear. Understood? The anxiety in Robb's voice was real. Whatever Ned had told him before leaving, it had frightened him. I'll be careful, Jon said. Good. Robb managed to smile. Now come on. We have a castle to run and I have no idea what I'm doing. They turned toward the keep as the last of the royal party disappeared through the gates. Winterfell felt emptier already, the courtyard echoing where before it had been full of noise and color. Jon looked up at the gray walls and felt the weight of what was coming. The lie had held for 14 years. But lies did not last forever. Eventually, someone looked too closely. Eventually, the truth leaked out. He just had to make sure he was far away when it happened. 3 months passed. Winter began to arrive in earnest. Snow fell thick and steady. The days shortened, the cold bit deeper. Ravens from King's Landing came irregularly, carrying Ned's reports on the governance of the realm and Sansa's excited letters about court life. Arya's letters were less enthusiastic. She wrote about a dancing master named Syrio Forel, who was teaching her the water dance, about the tedium of needlework lessons, about how much she hated the capital and its stinking streets. No letters came from Ned about Robert's suspicions. No word about Cersei's accusations. The crisis seemed to have passed. Jon trained harder than ever. He spent mornings in the yard with Ser Roderick, drilling with sword and spear until his muscles screamed. Afternoons he worked with Robb on the castle's accounts, learning stewardship even though a bastard would never hold lands. Evenings he read in the library, histories of the North, treatises on warfare, anything to fill his mind and push away the constant awareness that he was different, dangerous, wrong. Bran climbed everything despite constant warnings. Rickon toddled after Jon like a puppy, calling him John and demanding to pet Ghost. The direwolf tolerated the attention with surprising patience. Catelyn watched Jon with calculating eyes, but she said nothing. The threat had receded. Jon was staying in the north. Her children's inheritance was safe for now. Then a raven came from King's Landing that changed everything. Robb opened it in Ned's solar with Jon and Maester Luwin present. He read it once, then read it again, his face going pale. What is it? Jon asked. Father's been injured, gored by a boar while hunting. Robb's voice was tight. He's alive, but the wound is bad. He's asking for me to come south, to... He stopped, swallowing hard. To take his place as hand if he dies. No, Jon said immediately. You can't go to King's Landing. It's a trap. A trap. Father is injured. Every week. And suddenly he's injured badly enough that Ned might die. Jon's mind raced. Robb, think. Cersei has been looking for a way to remove Father since we left Winterfell. She suspects things she can't prove. If Father dies, if you go south as his replacement, I have to go. He's our father. And you're the heir to Winterfell. The only thing standing between the North and chaos if Ned dies. Jon grabbed Rob's arm. Send someone else. Send Maester Lewin to tend Father's wounds. Send men to protect him. But don't go yourself, not until we know what's really happening. Rob looked at the letter again. There's more. Father wants you to take the Black, to join the Night's Watch immediately. Before, his eyes met Jon's, before Robert asks questions about you again. The words hit like a fist. The Wall, the Night's Watch. Black brothers who served for life, gave up all claims, all names, all futures. It was exile dressed in honor. It was also safety. A man of the Night's Watch could not inherit, could not threaten thrones, could not be a Targaryen pretender even if someone discovered the truth. When does he want me to leave? Jon asked. Immediately. Uncle Benjen is at Castle Black. He'll take your vows personally. Rob's face was anguished. I don't want you to go. But if Father says it's necessary, then it's necessary. Jon felt numb. I'll prepare to leave tomorrow. Jon. It's fine, Rob. Truly. I've thought about the Wall before. It's where bastards go when they have nowhere else. Jon managed to smile. And I'll finally be somewhere I belong. Where my hair and eyes don't matter. Where I'm just another man in black. But even as he said it, Jon felt the trap closing. Ned was injured, possibly dying, and his last thought was to hide Jon as far from Robert as possible. Which meant the danger was worse than Jon had known. Meant Cersei's suspicions were still alive. Meant everything was falling apart in King's Landing. And Ned was trying to save Jon before the collapse came. That night, Jon packed his few possessions. He had little, clothes, weapons, a few books. Everything he owned fit in a single chest. The life of a bastard, measured in things that could be carried. Ghost watched from the corner, red eyes glowing in the firelight. The direwolf knew something was wrong. Jon could feel it in the bond that connected them. The strange awareness that let him sense Ghost's moods and sometimes even slip into the wolf's skin in dreams. A knock at the door. Jon opened it to find Catelyn standing there. May I come in? She asked. Jon stepped aside. Catelyn entered and closed the door behind her. She looked at the packed chest, at Ghost, at Jon. Rob told me you're taking the Black, she said. Yes, my lady. It's the right choice. Catelyn's voice was neither kind nor cruel, just factual. The Night's Watch will protect you in ways Winterfell cannot. Once you swear your vows, you're untouchable. Even the king cannot demand a brother of the Watch abandon his post. I know. But you should also know something else. Catelyn moved closer. I've spent 14 years fearing you, fearing what you could become, fearing that Brandon's son would threaten my son's inheritance. But tonight I realized something. What? You never wanted any of it. The castle, the name, the power. Catelyn's eyes were softer than Jon had ever seen them. You just wanted to belong, to be Pack, and we never let you have even that. Jon's throat tightened. My lady, I'm not asking forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know. She stopped, struggling with words. You deserved better than we gave you, better than I gave you. You're a good boy, an honorable boy. You'll make a fine man of the Night's Watch. He stood staring at the closed door, Ghost whining softly beside him. For 14 years, Catelyn had looked at him with calculation and cold assessment. Now, on his last night in Winterfell, she had given him something he had never expected. Acknowledgement. Almost respect. The ghost of what could have been if he had been born different, if the lies had been simpler, if the world had been kinder. Jon sat on the bed and buried his face in Ghost's fur. The direwolf pressed close, warm and solid and real. Tomorrow he would leave for the Wall. Tomorrow he would become Jon Snow of the Night's Watch, giving up all claims, all futures, all possibilities. Tomorrow he would be safe. But tonight he was just a boy saying goodbye to the only home he had ever known. Jon left at dawn with 20 men, rangers heading north to the Wall on rotation, led by Yoren, a grizzled recruiter in black, who smelled of horse and sour wine. Rob embraced him in the courtyard. I'll visit. When this is settled with Father, when things are stable, I'll come north and we'll drink, and you can tell me how terrible the Wall is. I'll be waiting. Bran cried and clung to Jon's leg until Jon had to physically pry him off. "I'll miss you, Jon. Please don't go." "I have to, but I'll think of you every day." Jon ruffled Bran's hair. "Keep climbing. Just be more careful about it." Rickon didn't understand what was happening. He waved goodbye cheerfully, already distracted by a stable boy with a wooden horse. Arya and Sansa were gone, in King's Landing with Ned. Jon felt their absence like missing teeth. The only one who came to see him off besides family was Maester Luwin, who handed Jon a small package wrapped in oilcloth. "Books," Luwin said, "for the road, and for the wall. The Night's Watch keeps its own library, smaller than ours, but serviceable." His old eyes were kind. "You have a good mind, Jon Snow. Don't let it rot just because you're wearing black." "Thank you, Maester." Jon mounted his horse. Ghost loped beside him as the group rode toward the gates. Jon looked back once at Winterfell's gray walls, at Robb standing in the courtyard watching him leave. Then he turned north and did not look back again. The journey to Castle Black took 16 days. They rode through increasingly wild country, past the last hearth where the Umbers held the northernmost castle, past scattered holdfasts and farms, into lands where wildlings sometimes raided and the trees grew thick and dark. Yoram kept them moving at a steady pace, camping rough, eating hard bread and dried meat. The other recruits were a mixed group, a poacher running from the king's justice, 2 rapers from the Fingers, a boy who had stolen from his father, the dregs of the 7 kingdoms sent to the wall to be useful one last time. Jon kept to himself. He practiced with his sword when they stopped, worked through the forms Ser Roderick had taught him. Ghost hunted in the woods and returned each night with blood on his muzzle, bringing rabbits or squirrels to share. On the 10th day, they met a rider coming south. The man wore black and rode a gaunt horse, his face wind-burned and exhausted. He pulled up when he saw Yoren's group. "You're heading to the wall?" the rider asked. "Aye," Yoren said. "Bringing recruits." "What's happening?" "Lord Commander Mormont sent me south with urgent news." "For the king, for all the lords." The rider's voice was grim. "The dead are rising beyond the wall. White Walkers. The old stories are coming true." Jon's blood went cold. White Walkers were legends. Monsters from the Age of Heroes, defeated 8,000 years ago. They could not be real. "You're mad," Yoren said. "I'm not. I've seen them. We all have. Blue eyes that glow like ice. Dead men walking. Cold that kills with a touch." The rider's hand trembled on his reins. "The wall is under threat. Real threat. We need men. We need help." "The watch number's barely 300 now. If the dead come in force." 300? Jon asked. "I thought the watch had 1,000 brothers." "We did. Once. Now we're a shadow. Undermanned. Underfunded. Forgotten." The rider looked at Jon's silver hair, his purple eyes, and something changed in his expression. "You're the Stark boy. The bastard. I heard about you. I'm no one. You're someone headed to the wall. That's all that matters." The rider gathered his reins. "Tell the Lord Commander when you arrive. Tell him I'm riding for King's Landing. Tell him I'll return with help or I'll die trying." He rode south, vanishing into the trees. Yoren spat. "White Walkers. The man's been too long in the cold." But Jon felt something stir in his chest, a memory of old Nan's stories, of the long night when darkness covered the world and the dead walked, of the Night's Watch standing against them, holding the wall while humanity cowered behind. If the stories were true, if the dead really were rising, then the wall was not exile. It was the only place that mattered. Castle Black was a dump. Jon saw it from a mile away, a fortress of black stone crouched at the base of the wall like a beetle against a cliff. The wall itself rose 700 feet high, a vast sheet of ice that stretched east and west as far as the eye could see, ancient and implacable and terrifying in its scale. They rode through Castle Black's gates into a courtyard that smelled of unwashed men and old grease. Buildings huddled together in no particular order. Barracks, armory, kennels, a sept that looked abandoned, stables that had seen better decades. Men in black moved through the yard, old and young, hard-faced and broken, united only by the color of their cloaks. They stopped to stare at the new recruits, at Jon's silver hair, at Ghost. "Never seen a direwolf this far south," one man muttered, "and never seen one white as bone. Look at that hair, like a Targaryen princeling playing at being a bastard. Jon kept his face blank and followed Yoren to the main keep where the Lord Commander waited. Jorah Mormont was a stocky man with a grey beard and fierce eyes. He looked Jon over with the assessment of someone who had commanded men for decades and could measure worth at a glance. "Jon Snow," Mormont said, "Ned Stark's nephew. I knew your uncle Brandon. He visited the wall once as a boy. Climbed to the top despite everyone telling him not to. Nearly gave his father a seizure." A slight smile. "You have his look." The silver hair aside, "My mother was Ashara Dane, my lord." "So I heard." "The violet eyes make sense then." Mormont gestured for Jon to sit. "Your Uncle Benjen told me you'd be coming. Says you're here to take the black. That true?" "Yes, my lord." "Why? You're young, well-trained, you could have a life in the world. Why choose this?" Jon thought of Ned's letter, of Cersei's suspicions, of Robert's hatred for anything Targaryen, of the trap closing around a silver-haired boy who should not exist. "Because I'm a bastard," Jon said. "And the wall is where bastards go when they have nowhere else." "The wall is where men go when they're done running," Mormont corrected. "Here you'll find rapers, murderers, thieves, and cowards. Men the realm threw away. But you'll also find second chances, honor in service. A place where your birth doesn't matter, only what you do. That's all I want, is it?" Mormont leaned forward. "Because the wall is not a holiday, boy. It's cold and brutal and grinding. You'll stand watch in storms that freeze piss before it hits the ground. You'll fight wildlings and hunger and boredom. You'll give up women, family, land, everything you might have been. And you'll do it until you die, or the watch releases you, which is to say, until you die." "I understand. Do you?" Mormont's eyes were sharp. "Or are you just running from something?" Jon met his gaze. "Maybe both. Does it matter? Long as you can swing a sword and follow orders." Mormont stood. "You'll train with the other recruits under Sir Alliser Thorne. He's a hard man but a good teacher. You'll learn what it means to be a brother of the Watch. And when you're ready, you'll take your vows before the Heart Tree and become one of us. When will that be?" "When I decide you've earned it. Could be a month. Could be 6. Mormont moved toward the door. "Welcome to Castle Black, Jon Snow. Prepare to hate every moment of it." Sir Alliser Thorne hated Jon on sight. The Master-at-Arms was a knight who had fought for the Targaryens during Robert's rebellion. After the war, he had been given a choice: execution or the wall. He chose the wall and spent 14 years nursing his resentment while training men he considered beneath him. He took one look at Jon's silver hair and his face twisted with disgust. "Another pretty boy," Thorne said. "Come to play at being a crow. Tell me, Snow, did they send you north because you're too beautiful for the regular army? Worried you'd distract the soldiers?" The other recruits laughed. Jon said nothing. "Let's see if you can fight as pretty as you look." Thorne tossed Jon a practice sword. "Gren, show our lordling what real combat feels like." Gren was a thick-set boy with a slow manner and honest eyes. He looked apologetic as he picked up his own practice blade. They circled. Gren swung hard and clumsy, the kind of attack that would work on an untrained opponent through sheer strength. Jon deflected easily, stepped inside Gren's guard and tapped him lightly on the ribs. "Point," Jon said. Again, Thorne snapped. They went again and again. Jon won every exchange. Gren was stronger, but Jon was faster, better trained, more experienced. Sir Roderick Cassel had taught him well. "Enough," Thorne said. His voice was venomous. "Of course you can beat a farmer's boy. Let's try someone with actual training. Halder. Take him." Halder was a smith's apprentice, more experienced than Gren, but still no match for Jon. 3 exchanges and Jon had disarmed him. Thorne's face went red. "You think you're special, don't you, Snow? Think you're better than these common boys because you were raised in a castle? Because some highborn lady spread her legs for a Stark and birthed a silver-haired bastard?" Jon's jaw clenched. "I think nothing, sir. I'm just doing what you asked. What I asked is for you to learn humility. Instead, you're showing off like a peacock." Thorne grabbed a practice sword himself. "Let's see how you do against a real knight." Thorne was older, heavier, more experienced, but he was also angry, which made him sloppy. Jon defended carefully, waiting for an opening. It came. Thorne overextended on a high cut. Jon ducked under it, swept Thorne's legs, and put the practice blade to the knight's throat. The yard went silent. Thorne stared up at Jon with pure hatred. You'll regret that, boy. I was just doing what you asked, sir. Get out of my sight. All of you. Training is over. Jon walked to the barracks with the other recruits staring at him. Gren caught up as they entered the building. That was amazing, Gren said. I've never seen anyone beat Thorne before. I shouldn't have done it. I made an enemy. He was already your enemy. At least this way you have his respect. That was humiliation. Jon sat on a bunk, the one in the corner, farthest from the others. Ghost curled up at his feet. He'll make my life hell now. He makes everyone's life hell. You're just special. Gren grinned. Where'd you learn to fight like that? Winterfell. Ser Rodrik Cassel trained me. An anointed knight. That explains it. Gren's admiration was genuine. The rest of us are rapers and thieves and runaways. You're actually trained, actually skilled. Why are you here? Because I'm a bastard, and bastards don't get choices. Another recruit spoke up. Pipe, a small boy with quick eyes and a quicker mouth. That's horseshit. You're here because someone wanted you far away from something. What are you running from? Jon looked at Pip, at Gren, at the other boys watching him with curiosity and suspicion. The same things we're all running from, Jon said finally. The past, mistakes, things we can't change. It was answer enough. The recruits returned to their own business, cleaning weapons, mending clothes, the small rituals of men with nothing but time. Jon lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. He could still hear Thorne's words. Silver-haired bastard. The Master-at-Arms had seen his coloring and hated him for it, because Thorne had fought for the Targaryens, had known what Targaryen features meant. If Thorne suspected, if word spread, if someone sent a raven south saying there was a boy at Castle Black with Valyrian features who claimed to be Brandon Stark's son, Jon closed his eyes. He was supposed to be safe here, supposed to be beyond Robert's reach. But safety was an illusion. The lie followed him everywhere. He would just have to make sure no one looked too closely. 2 weeks after Jon arrived at Castle Black, a raven came from King's Landing. Lord Commander Mormont summoned Jon to his chambers. The solar was warm, a fire burning in the hearth. A raven perched on a stand, squawking, "Corn, corn," at irregular intervals. "Your father is dead," Mormont said without preamble. The words did not make sense. Jon stared at the Lord Commander, waiting for the real meaning to arrive. Lord Eddard Stark was arrested for treason, Mormont continued. His voice was grave. He confessed in the throne room before the court. King Robert had died from his hunting wounds. Joffrey took the throne. Ned was supposed to take the black, "Come here to the wall," but Joffrey ordered his execution instead. They beheaded him on the steps of the Great Sept of Baelor. Jon felt the floor tilt. No. I'm sorry, boy. The realm has gone mad. The Lannisters control King's Landing. Your brother Robb has called the Northern Banners. War is coming. My sisters, your sister Arya, disappeared during the chaos. No one knows where she is. Sansa is a hostage in the Red Keep. Mormont's expression was grim. The realm is tearing itself apart. The Riverlands are burning. Stannis Baratheon has declared Joffrey a bastard born of incest, and claimed the throne for himself. Renly Baratheon has done the same from the Reach. 5 kings, all fighting for one throne. 5 kings. War. Ned dead. Arya missing. Sansa a hostage. Jon could not breathe. Could not think. The room spun around him. There's more, Mormont said quietly. Before your father died, he sent a letter to me, asking me to keep you safe at the wall, asking me to make sure you never leave, asking me to... He paused, asking me to protect you from anyone who came asking questions about a silver-haired boy. He knew someone would come looking. He knew the danger you were in, though he didn't explain what danger or why. Mormont studied Jon. Want to tell me the real story, boy? Who you really are? I'm Jon Snow, Brandon Stark's bastard. Are you? Mormont's eyes were shrewd. Because I've been thinking about the timeline. Brandon Stark died in 282. Executed by the Mad King. You were born in 282. Your mother was a Shara Dane who threw herself from a tower after giving birth. Your coloring is Valyrian. And your father, your supposed uncle, went to extraordinary lengths to hide you at the wall where no one could touch you. Jon said nothing, his hands clenched on the chair arms. I don't need to know the truth, Mormont said. I don't care if you're Brandon's son, or Ned's, or the Mad King's ghost. You're a brother of the Night's Watch now. That's all that matters. But understand this. Men will come asking questions. The Lannisters, the Baratheons, maybe others, and I will tell them the same thing I'm telling you. Jon Snow took the black. He's untouchable. He's beyond the reach of kings and politics and southern wars. Why would you protect me? Because the Night's Watch is not a political institution. We don't care about southern squabbles. We care about the wall, about the real threats. Mormont leaned forward. And right now, the real threat is beyond the wall. The dead are rising, Jon Snow. White Walkers are real. The long night is coming again. I need every good man I can get. I don't care what color his hair is. Jon felt something shift in his chest. For 14 years, he had been a danger, a threat, a weapon that could be turned against the people he loved. But here, at the end of the world, his past did not matter, only what he could do. When can I take my vows? Jon asked. Tonight, if you want. Tomorrow. Whenever you're ready to give up being Jon Snow the Bastard and become Jon Snow of the Night's Watch. Tonight, Jon said. I'm ready now. They held the ceremony in the Godswood, a small grove of trees north of Castle Black, where a heart tree grew with its white bark and red leaves. Jon knelt in the snow before the tree. Ghost sat beside him, the white direwolf's red eyes reflecting the torchlight. Behind them stood Benjen Stark, Jon's uncle, a ranger of the Night's Watch who had come south to speak the words. The other recruits watched from the shadows. Gren, Pip, Halder, even Sir Alistair Thorne stood silent, his face unreadable. Benjen spoke the words of the vow, and Jon repeated them. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post. I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. I am the shield that guards the realms of men. I pledge my life and honor to the Night's Watch, for this night and all the nights to come. He felt them take root, become part of him. He was Jon Snow of the Night's Watch now. No longer Brandon's bastard. No longer Ned's nephew. No longer the silver-haired boy who should not exist. Just a man in black, sworn to defend the realms of men from the darkness beyond the wall. When the ceremony ended, Benjen pulled Jon aside. I heard about Ned, Benjen said. His voice was rough with grief. About what happened in King's Landing. Yes, he loved you. You know that, right? Everything he did was to protect you. Jon's throat tightened. I know. Last time I saw him, Benjen's hand gripped Jon's shoulder. He said if anything happened to him, I was to tell you the truth. About your mother. About who you really are. Jon's heart stopped. What truth? Not here. Not now. But soon. Benjen's eyes were sad. You're safe at the wall, Jon. Safer than anywhere in the Seven Kingdoms. The vows protect you. The Watch protects you. But you should know who you're protecting the realm from knowing about. That's the truth. Is it? Benjen released him. Think on it. And when you're ready to hear the real story, come find me. I'll be beyond the wall on ranging, but I'll return eventually. We'll talk then. He walked away, leaving Jon alone with Ghost and questions he was not sure he wanted answered. 6 months passed. Winter came to the wall in earnest. Snow fell in blinding curtains. The wind howled through the passes. Temperatures dropped so low that exposed skin froze in minutes. The brothers huddled in Castle Black and took turns standing watch on the wall's summit, 700 feet above the ground where the cold bit like teeth. Jon worked, he trained, he stood his watches without complaint. He made friends with Gren and Pipe and Samwell Tarly, a fat, frightened boy who arrived terrified and left transformed by the brotherhood they built. He rose through the ranks. Lord Commander Mormont made him his personal steward, recognizing Jon's education and competence. It was an honor disguised as servitude. Stewards to the Lord Commander often became commanders themselves. Ravens came from the south with news of the war. Robb Stark was crowned king in the north by his bannermen, refusing to kneel to Joffrey or Stannis or Renly. The Riverlands burned. The Reach marched. Thousands died in battles with names Jon barely knew. And in the far north, beyond the wall, the real war was beginning. Wildlings were moving south, not raiding parties but whole clans, fleeing something. Rangers went out to investigate and did not return. The few who came back told stories of abandoned villages, of whites with blue eyes, of cold that killed with a touch. Mormont called a council. We need to know what's happening beyond the wall. The wildlings are running from something. The dead are rising. The old stories are coming true. His gaze swept the assembled brothers. I'm leading a great ranging, 300 men. We'll ride north to the Fist of the First Men and beyond. We'll find out what's happening, and we'll do what the Night's Watch has always done. Stand between the realms of men and whatever comes from the darkness. Jon volunteered immediately. So did Gren. So did Sam, though he was terrified. So did every brother who could swing a sword. They rode north a week later, 300 men in black on small hardy horses, with supplies for weeks and weapons for months. The Lord Commander's raven flew with them, squawking corn at inopportune moments. Jon rode with Ghost running ahead, the white direwolf scouting the trail. He wore black from head to toe now, his silver hair hidden beneath a hood, his purple eyes the only color in a monochrome world. He was beyond politics, beyond thrones and kings and southern wars. He was a man of the Night's Watch, riding into the darkness to face the real enemy. And if the White Walkers came, if the long night fell, if the dead rose and marched on the wall, then Jon Snow would stand against them. Not as a bastard, not as a hidden prince, but as a brother of the Night's Watch, sworn to defend the realms of men until his last breath. The vows had set him free. The wall had given him purpose. And whatever truth Benjen wanted to tell him about his mother, about his birth, about the lies that had shaped his life, it could wait. The darkness beyond the wall was rising. The dead were waking. The long night was coming. And Jon Snow would be ready. Epilogue. Far to the south, in the swamps of the Neck, Howland Reed received a visitor. The man was old, weathered by sun and wind. With the look of someone who had walked far, he carried a message sealed with wax, the direwolf of House Stark. From Robb Stark. The messenger said, "The king in the north." Howland broke the seal and read. His face, already lined with age, grew grimmer with each line. The letter asked questions. About the Tower of Joy, about what Howland had seen there, about a baby born with silver hair and purple eyes, about whether Jon Snow was really Brandon Stark's bastard, about whether the most dangerous secret in Westeros was hidden at the wall, wearing black, safe from kings and politics and anyone who might use him. Howland set the letter down. He had kept Ned's secret for 16 years, had watched a silver-haired boy grow into a man at Winterfell, knowing the truth, saying nothing. Now Ned was dead, and Robb was asking the questions Ned had forbidden. Howland looked north, toward the wall where Jon Snow stood watch against the darkness. "I'm sorry, Ned," Howland said quietly, "but your sons deserve the truth. All of them." He picked up a quill and began to write. The lie had held for 16 years, but lies did not last forever. Eventually, the truth demanded its due, and the truth about Jon Snow, about who his mother really was, about whose son he truly was, would reshape the Seven Kingdoms if it ever came to light. But that, Howland thought as he wrote, was a problem for another day. For now, Jon was safe. The wall protected him. The vows protected him. And in the darkness beyond the wall, the real war was beginning. A war where bloodlines and crowns and secrets would mean nothing, where only courage and steel and brotherhood mattered. Jon Snow would face that war as a man of the Night's Watch. And when it was over, if any of them survived, then the truth could come out. Then the silver-haired wolf could learn what he really was. Then the Song of Ice and Fire could truly begin. But not today. Today, Jon Snow was just another brother in black, standing watch on the wall, protecting the realms of men from the darkness. And that, Howland thought, was exactly where Ned Stark had wanted him to be. Safe, hidden, alive, ready for the long night. The story concludes with Jon Snow safely at the wall, protected by his Night's Watch vows from Robert's suspicions and southern politics. Ned Stark's death has removed the immediate threat, but also freed Jon to become fully a brother of the Watch. The lie about Brandon and Ashara has held, barely, but Howland Reed's epilogue suggests the truth may eventually emerge. The real war against the White Walkers is beginning, positioning Jon where he needs to be for the long night. The silver-haired wolf has found his purpose defending the realms of men, even as questions about his true parentage remain unanswered. The story is complete. Jon escaped the trap, took the black, and became the shield that guards the realms of men, exactly as Ned's promise to Lyanna intended. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.